Welcome back to another edition of the City That Never Sleeps Show. I'm your host, Parris, joined always by my co-host, Ryan Toomey. Ryan, how are we doing today?
We're finally back. It's good to be here. It's been a minute.
Yeah, I think you still might be opting on Central Time a little bit. No?
Just a tad.
Yeah, but we a great show ahead of you guys today. We obviously, as we said last week, we're in Nashville. Nashville is fantastic. Pretty cool. Not gonna lie. Wu-Tang forever. If you know, you know. But we got a lot of Jets news to cover. We got lots of NFL news to cover. NBA is heating as we approach the playoffs. Same with the NHL. And baseball talk, World Baseball Classic. I got to get off my chest with that. So we're gonna get into all that. But right off top of the show, this news actually broke 20 or 15 minutes before the episodes we about to go live. Willis Reed, one of the Knicks time greats, actually passed away afternoon at old. If you're a fan, Willis Reed is known for the quote Willis Reed game where he was hurt, thought he wasn't going to play. He comes running out, leads the Knicks to the championship. He's the only Knick to win Finals MVP and NBA MVP. Legendary player, legend person, and he will be sorely missed in both the world and the Knicks community. So just want to express my condolences. Start off the show. Felt like wasn't really to start off the show, and you know we also have a show to get into, but there's no real good way to pivot off of that. So Toom, you got any thoughts?
No, that's always tough to hear, and it happens a lot. And hope his family's doing well, family, friends. And he lived a phenomenal legacy, and his name will live on for a long time. And it's great to hear that. I don't know. It's always sad to hear, you know, especially being a New York guy as well. But hopefully his name will live on for a long time.
And just to read some of the accolades, this pod of fame on Twitter. If you don't follow, I would recommend giving him a follow. Podcast. Willis Reed was a 70 NBA MVP, averaging 22.2. He's a 2-time NBA, a 2-time NBA champion, 5-time All NBA, 7-time All Star, 12,183 points, 8,414 rounds. And one of the faces on Mount Rushmore. So obviously before my time, before a lot of people are probably listening to the show, but undeniably one of the greatest Knicks of all time, and you could probably he is the Knick of all time, if not him, probably Patrick Ewing and maybe a few other guys like Clyde Frazier. You know, just coming out of Knicks land, and we'll get to them later in the show. But you know, it was the anniversary of that championship team. You hope that can carry on the legacy this season and continue pushing. Like I said, there's not really a good transition to that, but yeah, and we're gonna move on. NFL news because to me. The Jets are the destination for Aaron. Your thought.
It's kind of a tease right now, but we know he's coming, so it's a good thing. I mean, it's great news. I mean, since the beginning of this, the only thing we've been talking about is the top 3 quarterbacks we wanted, and we finally got one. It's just a matter of time of when and what we have to give up to get him, but it's going to be an exciting season just from the start, just because we got our guy. For sure. Maybe it's not the car or the Jackson we wanted, but Aaron Rodgers, he's going to bring great football to New York for the time that he will be there. We don't know how long it will be, but I'm curious to see what the details are when the deal's made.
Yeah, so what do you call it? Yeah, so there is, you know, sorry, I was muted for a second. We talked about this weeks upon weeks, talking about, oh, is it going to be this guy? Is it going to be that guy? Is it going to be this guy? And, I think at the end of the day, this was probably the one that was the most likely, but at the same time wasn't like you couldn't guarantee. Like, you couldn't come out and say, oh, Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Jet, because no one knew. But a lot of the dominoes were falling into place where, Green Bay is coming out and saying, oh, we don't know if we necessarily want Rodgers to be our quarterback. The Raiders bow out. The Titans bow out. There's really only the Jets as the option. The Jets go meet Rodgers in California. Like, all these different things fall into place. And then it all culminates in, and this is when we were in Nashville, with Rodgers on the Pat McAfee Show essentially saying, my intention is to play for the New York Jets. And that part wasn't the surprising part. It was great to have the confirmation. It's great to have confirmation that, this guy wants to play. He's not retiring. He gives his whole story on why he wants to keep playing and why he wants to play for the Jets. But the problem, and this really comes to our question of the day, which, as I will pop up on the screen right here, the Jets will not give up a first in the Rodgers trade. Agree or disagree in the comments below. We already have some feedback. We got Don in the chat saying he thinks the cost for Rodgers is 1 first and 2 second-round picks. This is where the conversation begins, truly, because, it's very interesting. Because on the one hand, off name value, you would assume Rodgers wouldn't go for a number 1 pick. Or you would assume he would go for a number 1 pick. You would assume he'd go for a good chunk more of that. But the reality of the situation is, this is a guy that, let's face it, is 39, approaching 40 years old. He has been teetering on retirement for the past 2-3 seasons. There's no guarantee that he even plays beyond this season. So if you're the Jets in that situation, you aren't going to trade the farm. You're not. You're not going to give up this bounty of picks to get Rodgers when you don't even know if he's going to be on your team beyond this season. Yes, you're going all in, but you don't know if that window is 1, 2, maybe even 3 years. On the opposite side, the Packers are sitting here, and they're most likely being, we need something of value back for him. We need to get a return on this franchise legend. I want to hear your thoughts on the matter, Toomey, because I'm going to give my thoughts, and I may not fall in the really either camp, but I really want to hear where you fall on this whole leverage discussion that has taken over social media.
No, so yeah, it is a tad of a balancing act. When you said the Jets, he's an older player. The Jets don't really want to give up their future picks, but when it comes to the Packers are going to want to get something for Mr. Aaron Rodgers. And from where I see it, I don't know, it kind of falls into that feel that Rodgers says he wants to be a Jet. Everyone knows Rodgers wants to be a Jet. The Jets know it. The Packers know it. So what leverage do the Packers have on what they can really receive back for getting Aaron Rodgers? Maybe it's different in football, but I know in most sports, once a guy says he's going there or wants to go somewhere, it just ruins everything for the team that currently has his contract. When it comes to, I don't think a first round, I don't think the Jets are going to send it. Because no matter what, Aaron Rodgers is, 1, not playing for the Packers, or 2, he's going to leave. So they really have no leverage over him. Maybe the Jets can give him something. But as I recall, what was it, last year when the Eagles traded for A.J. Brown? What was it, a 5th? A 5th and a 6th, maybe? Something like that.
It was like a first round No, they got a first rounder,
They
but
did?
it was like the number 22 pick. It was like it wasn't this.
I thought he was traded for pennies
It was for a guy like AJ
for a guy
Brown.
like AJ Brown, but
It was like a pick swap and or not a pick swap. No, they just traded the. We'll have to look up the deal.
yeah,
But
I'll check it in a second. But like, I'm thinking more like a hockey mindset,
wasn't anything big.
where like, if we recall, when Kane was sent over, the Blackhawks had no leverage, so the Rangers got to swindle the Blackhawks and get Kane at such a low price. But I guess we'll see. I just don't think they'll go up a first round pick for it. I'm curious to hear your addition.
Yeah. So what do you call it? The AJ Brown trade was AJ Brown to the Eagles for the 18th and 101st overall picks. That was the entire package.
I might be thinking a different player then.
So we got some comments in the chat. We have Jake saying, "I'm really curious what the trade package is going to look like." We have Don, which I will get to that question after we discuss the compensation aspect. We got Derpy Entertainment saying Aaron Rodgers, overrated drama queen. I don't know about overrated, but drama queen, I could probably agree on that. But then Don says, remember Stafford asked for a trade request and Detroit got 2 first-round picks. So I think that's good jumping off point for me, because when it comes to the Stafford trade, and I know we're like upholding the Stafford trade as like this barometer for Rodgers. Rodgers is like 6 or 7 years older than Stafford when he was traded. Stafford is still, and I'll double check this, but I'm pretty sure Stafford is like in his young, like 30s or approaching mid 30s. He's 35 years old now. So when he got traded, he was in that like 32, 33-year-old range. Rodgers is 39. He is almost at the end. He's almost towards retirement. And the thing that I think a lot of people are ignoring is the Packers don't, and I'm assuming this, don't want to deal with the optics of blowing up this trade. Because Aaron Rodgers is not going to play for them if this Jets trade, for whatever reason, and we can discuss this when or if the time comes, he's not going to play for Green Bay again. And Toom, you said this. He literally came out there and talked about on McAfee how he did not appreciate how Green Bay treated him. He was shocked that Green Bay was essentially shopping him around without his knowledge. Obviously, we don't know what the truth is, but if he's coming out and saying this, I would assume that there's truth to it, on top of the fact that every person in charge in Green Bay has essentially had the underlying tone of, hey, we kind of want to move off Rodgers. We want to start Jordan Love. It's very intriguing for people that think, oh, the Packers are going to get this absolute haul. Why would the Jets have to blink? The Packers are, honestly, and this is where it gets into the question of the day, I don't think the Jets give up a first. The closest thing I think you get to it is a conditional pick that can become a first. I personally think that it's a second or third round pick this year. The Jets are not trading the number 13 overall pick this year. And then next year, it's a conditional pick that I think starts at a 3 and can maybe work up to a 1, depending on, where the Jets end up, how Rodgers does, if Rodgers comes back, all these different factors that can increase or decrease the value of the pick. I just don't see a world where the Jets are trading a first and change or multiple firsts for Rodgers. Number one, like I've been hammering home, Rodgers is 39. The dude's almost 40 years old. Number two, he's been close to retirement multiple years. Number three, no one's going to want to play in Green Bay if they blow up this Rodgers situation, because the optics of, oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers is just going to sit behind Jordan Love, not going to work. Truly just not going to work. He'll cause so many distractions that team will just bottom out. And they don't want that. They want to compete. They have a talented roster. And number 4, the Packers can't afford to keep him. Guess what? His cap hit, if he retires, is way higher than if they trade him. If he's on the roster, it's way higher than if they trade him. And yes, the Jets are probably desperate. The Jets 100% need Rodgers ASAP on their roster. He is their key because they don't currently have a quarterback. But I think the Packers blink before the Jets do. Because the Packers, in my opinion, have way more to lose. Look, it wouldn't be an ideal situation. But as we'll get to later in the show, Lamar Jackson's still out there. And that situation's continuing to deteriorate to the point where there's a rumor that came out that we'll cover on the show today that he simply might just want out of Baltimore. Matt Stafford's been linked to the Jets if this Rodgers thing falls through. So is Kirk Cousins. When you're desperate enough, you will find a quarterback. The Packers aren't in that situation. They're screwed cap-wise if Rodgers stays, and they're screwed optics-wise if they can't get this trade done. Now, I do think the trade gets done. I think Rodgers is a Jet this year. I just don't think the compensation is, the Jets are getting fleeced. The Jets are giving up all this capital. I don't think it's happening. I just don't. And quite frankly, look at Joe Douglas's track record. The guy hasn't overpaid for anybody in his entire tenure. He sticks to his price point, and he fleeces people. He gets return on guys that shouldn't have any value. There's been rumors that they're having trade discussions for Brandyn Mann. Brandyn Mann was like the worst punter in the NFL last year. He got a pick for Blake Cashman. If you seriously think he's going to cave and trade the 13th overall pick plus more for Rodgers, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. And look, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It happens. I want the trade to be done just as much as everyone else. I just don't think the Jets give up a first in this trade. And when I say a first, I mean like a legitimate first, not a pick that can convey into a first.
Yeah, it'd be a shock if it's their first round pick this year that they have given up. And like we said before, we don't think it's happening. I think you made some great points on the topic for sure. And I just think it's a matter of time until he becomes a Jet. But interesting news about those other quarterbacks too, that they're, I don't know, blindly linked to. How much of that is in the works? When you're talking about Stafford, Cousins.
Well, it's like, I honestly think it's to a point where it's like those names get floated out there where I think, and you got to remember, when things get floated, there's always a motive behind it. We have Thomas in the chat saying Lamar said he wanted out and that Stafford would be a huge get. Don said he would be shocked the Jets don't give up a first. Tom also says he thinks it's 1 first for Rodgers. Like, all valid points. And if they give up a first, I wouldn't be floored. I just don't think that the Jets are going to cave on that price. I think they're going to keep the 13th pick. And I think the earliest you would see a first is next year. But like I said, in terms of the leaking, I think the whole Stafford thing and the Cousins thing is, hey, it's like giving the sense of, guess what? Like, we're not, like, we want Rodgers, but we have other options. Like, don't play hardball with us. We'll back out. Where it's like, that may not necessarily be the case. That may not necessarily be what happens if the whole Rodgers thing falls through. But it's like giving that sense of like, yeah, like we have options when they might actually have those options. They might not have those options.
I just want to get done. I've
been
waiting for weeks now. I mean, I thought it was going to get done in Nashville. I really did. And then as it just keeps going on and on, I mean, they already got Lazard too. I mean, they're making the moves. I'm curious what other additions they make to that free agent wish list that he had as well, if any. I mean, I think we're going to get into more talks too as we go on the show about other guys that the Jets are looking at and other things around the NFL, but it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I wanted to get into kind of like what Rodgers truly does for the Jets, because that's going to then tie into the different signings they've had, the different guys they could potentially add. Because I know Don mentioned it earlier, but you know, the Jets have a shot to compete for the AFC East. He asked the question if they can win it. I think they definitely have a good shot. But this division now becomes one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. The Bills with Josh Allen and a roster that continues to improve. The Dolphins have made amazing moves, highlighted by the Jalen Ramsey acquisition. The Patriots, look, they're probably the worst team in the division at this point, but they still got Belichick on that side. And then you have the Jets adding Rodgers. I personally, because of the Dolphins' quarterback concerns, I think that they're the third best, but I think they're the second. I don't know. I think they're tied with the Jets and Bills' talent on paper, and they're all very close together. And I think all three of those teams have a great shot at playoffs, if not, let alone winning the division. It's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a complete bloodbath. But as we've said on this show throughout the season, we got Joe in the chat. Maybe neither of you have anything to contribute. I appreciate it, man. You know, we're talking about Jet stuff here, but hey, if you have an Aaron Rodgers source, why don't you share it? Because evidently no one out there has anything to add to it, because nothing has happened. So we're going to continue doing our show and hope you enjoy it, my friend. So getting back to it, you know, I think that Rodgers adds a good amount to the Jets. It's been talked about to death at this point that Jets just need a quarterback. Jets need a quarterback to really add to their defense that they had, which obviously still needs additions, and we'll get into that. But they had the worst quarterback play in the league, and they still almost were a playoff team. They still almost competed to get into a wild card spot with Zach Wilson playing quarterback down the stretch. You had Rodgers to this roster. I think that floor is like 8-9 wins, and that ceiling can be 11-12. Where do you stand on that?
No, like we said before, the Jets lost their way out of a playoff spot last year. And if you fix that one piece of quarterback, they're in the playoffs. Maybe even if Mike White stayed healthy and we didn't have to deal with some of those issues. I mean, Mike White kept us in games with teams that made the playoffs. I mean, we saw against the Bills. We saw against the Vikings, even though the Vikings had their monumental collapse in the playoffs. They were still a playoff team, and they were still in the regular season one of the best regular season teams, even though their schedule wasn't there that they played against, but still. I like the floor. The AFC East is tough, though, as we know, and it's going to stay tough for years to come. You got a dominant Bills team. Like you said, Belichick's still running the show in New England. And you got Miami, who's just keep making additions. It would be a failure of the season if they have Rodgers and they don't win more than 9. I really think that. Or at least not, you know what? They just got to make the playoffs. I won't talk about wins, losses. It will be a failed season if they don't make the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers. I think you agree with that, 100%. There's no way that team should not make the playoffs.
I mean, look, it was probably a playoff mandate before Rodgers even got there. I mean, this is a team that came so close. I mean, you had Zach Wilson lead the team to win over the Bills. You had literally a good you were a good quarterback play away from beating New England twice. You were you were a catch away from beating Minnesota. Like, all these things happen with Zach Wilson, Mike White, Chris Streveler, and Joe Flacco as your quarterbacks. Add Aaron Rodgers to that floor is raised. That floor is raised.
The Jets took themselves out of those Patriots games. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
They lost those games. The Patriots didn't win them.
Yeah, 100%. And like that's what I'm saying. It's like you win those 2 games. Okay, you're at
You're
9
in.
now. You're probably a playoff team. You win that Minnesota game. You're at 10. You win that Buffalo game. Oh, like that's with that type of quarterback play. And now you're adding Aaron Rodgers. So personally, I'm on board with you. You got to make the playoffs with this roster and Rodgers as your quarterback as it stands right now. Obviously, it's not official. No one has any idea when it's going to be official. As soon as we know that, we will be talking about it on the show. But quite frankly, no one knows that answer. Like, literally look at the reports that have come out. You've had reports that have called the Jets the team with all the leverage. You have reports that have come out that say the Packers have all the leverage. You have reports talking about both teams having leverage. The overall moral of the story is nobody knows when it's going to get done. And when it gets done, it's done. And if it doesn't get done, you'll probably hear about it. At the end of the day, that's all you can do. And you can only operate in the sense of, hey, this guy's probably going to be on the roster. How does the Jets roster, how does the Jets team improve with Aaron Rodgers on the roster? And that's really the biggest thing. And that ties into one of the, well, not one of, but really the main free agent signing they've had so far, Allen Lazard. Now, before I get into it, Toom, what'd you think when you saw Lazard sign with the Jets?
I was always a fan of him in Green Bay. I mean, last year he got stuck. You could say Christian Watson was number 1, but most definitely Lazard was the number 1 receiver there with his, just being there, his veteran presence on the team, him working with Rodgers already for years. He obviously isn't a number 1 receiver. He's a hell of a talent for sure. But he brings a lot of depth, I think, to that wide receiver room and some knowledge as well, especially if they get Rodgers or when they get Rodgers. He's worked with him for years. I think it's a great signing. Out of all the pieces that were on that free agent list, I wanted Lazard the most, and I think he brings the most value as well. So I think that's a great addition. I think he sits at the 2-3 receiver for the Jets right now, which is awesome. That's a great talent at that rotation spot. And he just brings another weapon to the team that hopefully next year the air is used a lot more. I know we saw Garrett Wilson have a phenomenal year, but after that, the air game wasn't really there for the team at staggering numbers, as you know. I mean, Elijah Moore almost left because he wasn't even getting the ball. I used to love Jordy Nelson. He used to be one of my favorite receivers going on him for sure.
I had to throw it up there because I love the comment from Don too much. I had to throw it up there. But he also asked, would you rather grab a first this year or next year? As I've said, I'd rather push it the next year and make it conditional. But I'm not on board just giving a straight up first. That's just if I'm the Jets, I'm kind of dragging my line in the sand there. Second, I'm fine with. Multiple seconds, potentially. First, not really.
I'm curious to see, too, with Lazard because, I mean, after going through the Jets season, and maybe it just falls on the quarterbacks, but the deep ball plays that receptions are made 30-plus yards didn't quite happen throughout the year. If you notice, I mean, not really. From what I'm looking back, mostly I just remember Garrett Wilson catching a ball, crossing the middle, and then turning it up. But not many plays attacking far downfield. I think the addition of Lazard helps that, one. And obviously the addition of Aaron Rodgers, we'll see a lot more fly routes, a lot more attacking downfield. But I want to hear your input on that because I don't think the Jets really made big plays downfield like that.
Well, I think a big part of that is you got to look at the quarterback play. You got to look at the guy behind center. Zach Wilson was meant to be that guy, but he was so tentative and kind of shook as a player. And at the same time, Jets didn't really let him open it up to the point where you couldn't really unleash that side of the offense. You couldn't really unleash Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore down the field. You add Aaron Rodgers, as you know, anyone who's watched football over the past decade and plus has seen, he unleashes amazing deep balls. He has a very good arm. Lazard is a very good contested catch player. He had, I'm I wrote an article about him this past week for Jets Insider. I think he had 9 contested catches this past year. It wasn't as great of a percentage. He had a few more drops than he did in the past few seasons, but got to remember too, context-wise, no more Devontae Adams. So Lazard was being relied on as like a primary target. If you look at his career numbers, Lazard has thrived when he isn't the primary focus of attention. And that's okay. Not every receiver is made to be the alpha, the number one guy. Lazard as a number 3 on a team with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, he's going to thrive because where Lazard is at his best is possession. He runs a lot of slant routes. He runs a lot of that middle of the field. I'm going to body up people because, he has that frame. He's 6'5". He's over 220. He's going to make those possession catches in the middle of the field, has the trust with the quarterback. And most importantly, especially for the Jets, he's a good red zone target. He's someone that can be counted on in the red area of the field. As much as I love Corey Davis, Lazard is a cheaper because his year is $11 million per year at AAV. It's 4 years, $44 million, but it's only 2 years, $22 million guaranteed. He's younger than Corey Davis, and he has the familiarity with the offense. So he's going to fit in perfectly with Hackett and with Rodgers, and he's going to be counted on in situations where now the Jets don't have to force feed Garrett Wilson, who I think is going to feast this year. They can spread the ball to Wilson, to Moore, to Lazard. You add Conklin, Uzama. You have Breece Hall getting back in there. It makes the Jets offense that much harder to defend because now you can't just key in on Garrett Wilson. Allen Lazard in a one-on-one situation, contested catch situation, without being the center of attention for offense, is going to do that much better. Elijah Moore getting those one-on-one situations, which, hey, he was open a lot of times last year. Jets just never threw him the ball. He's going to have a lot more potential to do damage. Lazard's addition, as I said in this article, it really shores up the wide receiver room. Would I still potentially make an addition? Absolutely. Still need a kick returner potentially. I like Zonovan Knight in that role. Some people think the Jets are going to draft one. Honestly, I'm good with either way. But maybe that fourth receiver is Odell Beckham. Maybe. That'd be something. I don't know if Odell would accept being a fourth option, but like those are the type of things that you have to talk about now, because if we transition into the actual roster, the Jets still have additions they need to make. Looking at some of their additions in free agency outside of Lazard, obviously re-signed Quincy Williams. I personally would have focused more on Quan Alexander. Quincy being back is a huge one. They got Tristan Cole and Wes Schweitzer. That's offensive line depth. That's replacing your Nate Herbig, your Dan Feeney that both left in free agency. You got Thomas Morstead back. So you're shoring up punter. Thank goodness. I could not stand another season of Brandon Man. No offense against him. He's not great at his job. And that's okay. And then you re-signed Greg Zuerlein, which Zuerlein's been probably the best Jets kicker we've had since the prime years of Nick Folk. So there's still additions that need to be made. Obviously, a fourth wide receiver would be great. Don says he'd rather trade for Hopkins. Don't know how the money works with that. I'd love DeAndre Hopkins in this offense because Hopkins, Elijah Moore, Lazard, and Garrett Wilson would be the best wide receiver core in the league. You just got to worry about, getting the ball to people because someone's getting left out at that point, and that's not great. Obviously, Toomey brought up the quote-unquote free agency wish list. Maybe a Randall Cobb, a Mercedes Lewis. Odell was on there as well. Who knows how that plays out? Not exactly a definitive list, but Rodgers has a tendency to he likes to play with his friends. I think it was last year or 2 years ago, he threatened to retire if they didn't bring Randall Cobb back. So you never know with that. But it's really the same primary needs that have existed for since the beginning of the offseason. Linebacker, which I would potentially add one more, whether that's Quan Alexander, whether that's in the draft. I personally lean more towards the draft. Also depends on what you give up in the Rodgers trade. Safety. Safety is critical for me. Jordan Whitehead's good. Chuck Clark being added in a trade. Love that move. I need one more guy. And then offensive line. Offensive line is probably number one, and then linebacker, safety, if you want to arrange it however you want. But if you, in looking at the guys left in free agency and looking at, the guys that are potentially in the draft, how are you potentially addressing these needs that the Jets still have?
On pretty much a list that you spoke about, I might make one more addition, but if you get Rodgers, got to protect him. That's the main focus. Protect your guy. And the defense, I'd say too, because the defense was so electric and so you can count on that defense last year so much. I think it falls below the offensive needs for sure. But yeah, when it comes down to it, I think it'd be O-line, safety, linebacker, and then I'd throw additional running back in there. Just in case. I know we had conversations about that. And the big hope was Jamal Williams, but not sadly, but he did go to the Saints, which is a good addition for them. But yeah, fix that online. You don't want Rodgers, especially at the age that he is, getting bumped around, pushed around. And then go after like a safety type when it comes to it. And then we'll see what they use that draft pick for. I'm still very curious. I know we're looking at mocks all the time. But they definitely should go safety, O-line at those points. And I think bolster up the rest in free agency. I mean, you saw what the Jets did last year. They made a great additions. I think it'd be hard for them to hit that nail 2 years in a row. But with my order, it would go, like said before, O-line, safety, linebacker, and then maybe additional running back to help take the pressure off Breece Hall on that knee.
We forgot one, or at least I forgot one, defensive line, like a run stopping defensive line. That's high on my list as well. Don mentions Mecole Hardman. I think that'd be a good addition as well. And Brian Branch for the Jets would be nasty. I agree. That would really fill out that safety room. Safety, there isn't too many names left in free agency. A lot of the big ones. Jets were never getting Jesse Bates. Jets were never getting these top-of-the-line guys. Personally, I would love a guy like Taylor Rapp for the Jets to go after. I would have loved Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I'm not sure why they didn't go after him at that price. Only 1 year, $8 million type deal. Would have been a fantastic addition for the Jets. But, you got to move on. They didn't get him. Got to look at the next guy. Guys like Adrian Amos, potentially alongside Rapp. Maybe you swing a trade for Kevin Byard. That would be my number one. That would be my number one option, non-draft. Go after him. Last dance Jets. Get him, restructure that deal to get as many guys on the roster as you can this year and figure it out afterwards. In the draft, Brian Branch is the number one guy, but I would probably want to trade down a few more slots because if I'm at 13, this brings me to O-line. I think that's a target right now for them at 13. O-line, whether it's Skoronski, Broderick Jones, or Paris Johnson Jr., those are the three guys that have consistently been linked to the Jets. If you look at different mock drafts, if you look at different websites, different Jets insiders, I think that's the position that is being targeted for 13. Now, doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Let's say the Jets give up a few second rounders for Rodgers. Do the Jets trade out of 13? Very possible. Very possible that happens. In that case, I'm potentially looking at like a Jackson Smith, Njigba from Ohio State. Add him to that wide receiver room. Now, you're not only drafting for the present, but also the future. You have your wide receiver core on lock. Maybe you trade down a few spots, let's say, and this is obviously pending off the field issues. Maybe Jalen Carter's there. And you put Jalen Carter next to Quinnen Williams, and you have confidence that that defensive line room will make sure Jalen Carter's right. Maybe you're trading down and looking at one of the lower tier offensive tackles and still recouping picks and then drafting a center in the second round. There's a lot of options that the Jets can do, but considering they haven't made too many free agency moves because they're still in a bit of a wait and see mode for Rodgers in terms of the actual compensation, this conversation is probably going to change in like 2 weeks. I'm not going to lie. This conversation probably is 10 times different 2 weeks from now because we'll know the compensation, hopefully in 2 weeks. If we're still having this conversation at that point, I'm going to be upset. But you're going to also know if the Jets pursued other needs, if they signed other guys. We know they went after Orlando Brown. We know they went after Fletcher Cox. So those are two needs right there that they know, that we know they are targeting. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things play out.
Exciting. It's an exciting time for the New York Jets.
When's the last time you could say that, my friend? When's the last time you could say that?
Say after the Fitzpatrick first season, but we saw how that went.
I kind of felt that was a fluke. I'm not going to lie.
That was my first Jets game. First Jets game was Patriots-Jets week 16. The Eric Decker OT touchdown.
I know exactly where I was on that day. I was with my aunt in Florida, and we were watching it on the TV, and it kept like freezing. I was losing my mind. I was like, we were like 14 at that point. And then the next week,
Rex Ryan.
The next week, the Kenbrell Tompkins game. That one still hurts my heart. That one still hurts my heart. It really does. But yeah, it's exciting times for the Jets. It's going to be an exciting and crazy stretch run until this actual damn trade package gets announced. Because I'm not going to lie to you, if I see any more arguments about leverage on my Twitter timeline, I'm going to lose my marbles. I can't do it. I just need it to be done. I need it to be done. It's just
Patience.
It's ridiculous. But yeah, I think it's time to jump over to the next New York team because unlike the Jets, they've done a lot. They've done a lot of like bigger tier moves. So the Giants, I think there's no better place to start than their trade for Darren Waller because I love it. I think it's a fantastic move.
Hell of a talent, hell of a tight end. Sadly, we didn't get to see him much last year because of the injury. But it gives Daniel Jones his number one weapon. And that's all people have been asking for. Get him a guy, get him a guy, get him a guy. Well, they got you when he's healthy and playing at his level. He was top 2 before Kittle last year. I put him now at top 3. He's a top 3 tight end in the league. I'm curious how they use him, what they do with him, but it's a great addition to the team, and Giants fans should love that addition. And it finally shows that the team's finally given Daniel Jones weapons to see what he can produce.
And to your point, I still think wide receivers had need for the Giants, but now it's not this, oh my goodness, we like literally have to draft the wideout. Now it's like, for me, looking at that, whoever falls to them, I think they can be selective in who they want because they still need that number one guy. They still need that number one wide receiver. But now it's not like, oh, we need to trade up to go grab him. If the opportunity presents itself, obviously things can change. But Darren Waller is such a big addition for Jones. When's the last time he's had a target like that? I don't think he has. And it's great It's really fantastic. And that's not the only move they made. They signed Parris Campbell to a 1-year deal worth up to $6 million, $6.7 million, $3 million guaranteed. They re-signed Darius Slayton into a 2-year deal. They signed Giad Ward. They signed Jeff Smith from the Jets. They obviously signed Daniel Jones. And they signed Bobby Okereke to a 4-year, $40 million contract with $22 million guaranteed. Also, underrated signing, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, 3-year deal. Defensive tackle. It's like they've made all these not star power moves, but they're shoring up that roster. I mean, they even brought Sterling Shepard back. So you didn't lose anyone in the wide receiver room. I was wrong. I thought Slayton was going to be gone. He's not. Parris Campbell was an underrated, like, number 3 type wide receiver. Add a what do you call it? Jordan Addison, a JSN, a Quentin Johnson, a Zay Flowers to this offense. You have Daniel Jones' best offense. You brought Barkley back. You are in a NFC that is, and there's no other way to say it, weak as you know what. The Giants have a shot to compete again for the playoffs. A very good shot. Not division, because I don't think, and I could be wrong. I don't think anyone touches Philly in the NFC East. But a high wild card slot, absolutely. I absolutely think the Giants can do that. Because at the end of the day, I think they're the 4th or 5th best team in the conference. They're definitely close to it.
I'm doing math in my head. Not math, but I'm doing some count in my head right now. They very much could be.
Eagles, Niners, 1-2.
Yeah.
They beat Minnesota.
Yeah, I don't count them.
So Dallas could be 3,
Dallas
right?
is up there, yeah.
They're better than the entire NFC South as of now. Obviously, injuries changes, but
yes.
At this point, they're better than the entire NFC South. I would say they're slightly better than Seattle. They're definitely better than LA and Arizona. Who's left? Who's left? Green Bay.
I see a ton of teams bouncing back and making big things, but we won't know it. As of currently right now, you're correct. You truly are. No, it's
Green Bay. You don't know. Chicago, no. Minnesota, and I'd say maybe Detroit. They're no worse than 6th in the conference.
Especially with all these additions too. Moral of the story: they did a great job this free agency.
Exactly.
And they still have a draft pick too. So
I love it. I love the Giants. I love the Giants.
Yeah.
I love the way the Giants are going about the offseason. It has really been impressive, and I love their regime. Between Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, they're how you should run an organization in terms of how to use free agency to then benefit the draft. You target the needs that are like you feel like you can target at not at insanely expensive value, and you fill up the holes that you have on the rest of the roster in the draft. It's great. I love it. And that's the thing. The coaching staff, their floor was so high with the team with a lack of talent that any talent added is going to raise the floor or raise the ceiling. However you want to look at it. Don asked if Saquon is still a free agent. He got franchise tagged. So because they agreed to the extension with Daniel Jones, they were able to place the tag on Barkley. Obviously, you never know if Barkley's going to play on the tag or not. That's always a fun situation. But who knows? I think he does because I think he plays on the tag. I think he figures something out with the Giants. I truly do.
It does put Saquon in a tough position, though, because he is getting up there in years. I would never want to put anything on that, but he's got to think of himself. He's an injury away from him not getting another contract in the NFL. Or not a big contract, I mean.
Well, also I could easily see the Giants taking a a running back in with one of their picks, because if you pull up Tankathon right now, excuse me, they have the 25th overall pick, number 57 overall pick, number 89 overall pick. They have a very good amount of picks in the later rounds in the draft. That one of those is probably going to be a running back. I mean, you're not relying on Matt Breida as your primary backup, and this is a pretty good running back class too. We all the talks about Bijan Robinson. There is Devon Achane we've talked about on the show. Jahmyr Gibbs we've talked about on the show. There's a lot of running backs we haven't even brought up yet that the Giants could easily see one. And let's face it, probably will see one with Barkley in the franchise tag limbo right now. And it'll be like, all right, he's a good fit for our scheme, a good style fit. We're going to add him and put him in the position group. Is what happens. Running backs have short shelf lives, unfortunately. I think Barkley's a little bit different in terms of what he brings to the table. Giants aren't going to overpay for him. It's not going to happen.
It's a real shame, but I guess back to they did a great job. I'm curious to see what they add, what other holes they have. But obviously Dable, him and the GM, they're brewing something big, and they're a true contender now in the NFC. May not a contender to win it all, but they're a team that's going to cause a lot of havoc in the NFC. And especially if Daniel Jones plays up to where they think his potential is. Who knows? Maybe Daniel Jones comes out next year and throws for 30, keeps it interceptions at 10, throws for more yards. He finally got weapons, especially if they draft another guy too.
I feel like the needs for the Giants, for me, I'm going to target wide receiver in the first round. My second round pick, I'm targeting a linebacker because I know there's going to be someone there in the second round. I would still add to that room as much as possible. They re-signed Jarrett Davis. Jarrett Davis was a freaking liability for them last year. Not great in the slightest. So that would probably be my first two picks, and then I'm probably looking at adding O-line depth O-line and D-line depth, because let's face it, you can never have too much depth in the trenches, especially with those two teams. Maybe you even flip the linebacker and defensive line picks, or linebacker and offensive line picks. But as we've said, the Giants have done a really, really, really good job shoring up their needs. And as we said with the Jets, I'm excited to see what they do the rest of the offseason.
All of New York teams right now. Look at that. What's going on?
So I think it's time to move on to full NFL news. And I'm going to give you the floor. Where do you want to start? Because there's a lot. Whether it's trade rumors, free agency signings, I want to give you the floor. Where do you want to start?
So do you want me to go to specific trades that occurred, or
anything?
I guess the biggest one, up there with the biggest one, is going to be Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield to the Bucks, correct?
I feel like there's plenty bigger ones, but no, I think
that one's interesting. I've always been a fan of Baker.
It's a very interesting one. I will agree with that.
So he's going to be when you think about it, he's got some great weapons down there in Tampa. He truly does. And a team that has a lot of potential I think they're already number 2 in the NFC South. And putting Carr in a new system too, you don't know what's going to go on in New Orleans. But I think it's a great addition for the team. Baker proved last year that he still wants to be active and still playing in the league. And he showed at some points, that Rams game when he first came is a prime example of a guy that still has a will to win and still has that, I guess you can call it nitty gritty inside him, that can make wins happen. But I don't know. I'm curious to see, especially with the weapons he's got down there, what they can make of it. But I'm excited to see what happens with Baker Mayfield in Tampa.
Yeah, I think that Mayfield showed he still has something left in the tank.
I think he's going to shock a lot of people. if I had to take my hot take for the day.
I'm just
for the season.
I'm just worried with him in Tampa because I just hope Bowles and that new offensive scheme works, because I feel like it won't be Mayfield's fault. It'll be the coaching staff's fault if that team's held back. Maybe it's a mix of both, but he's got weapons. He's got an offense. Let's see what he can make of it. I think that is a very interesting signing for me. The biggest thing for me right now is probably something that broke during the show. We got from Mike Florio, and Florio's been on some stuff. He's not been on some stuff. Like any reporter, you hit some, you miss some. Lamar Jackson apparently is ready to move on from the Ravens. And this is the kicker. This is the most important part, because if this is true, this changes everything. Another source told him that Lamar does not want a fully guaranteed contract. What has been the hang-up with Lamar, allegedly, this entire time, too?
He wants to keep all that money.
He wants the guarantee.
No matter what.
He wants the guarantee. If Lamar Jackson does not want the guarantee and he just simply wants out of Baltimore, that changes everything. That changes the entire landscape of the offseason. A team like Carolina that traded up to 1. Would they have needed to trade up? Could have they just traded the same type of package just to get Lamar? Potentially.
They could have.
But now, let's look at Atlanta. Let's look at, I guess Vegas. There's probably some other options. Maybe Tampa, even with the Mayfield signing. There's not too many options.
Would you be shocked if a team like Miami comes out of the woodwork? No. Okay.
So we got Brian Daly saying Lamar's running out of options, though. That is correct. If this report, and you got to remember, reports are all about timing. This report comes out earlier. Does that change how the Ravens play this? Probably, because they probably put the exclusive tag on him. And now the only team Lamar can negotiate with is Baltimore. But has this situation deteriorated already to a point where now Lamar is just so frustrated with Baltimore's negotiating tactics that he just doesn't want to be there? We don't know for certain. We don't know what's true. We don't know what's not true. But this is the story that I have my eye just completely locked in on. This is the one that can affect everything. Could be Indy as well. That's another team. But Lamar getting traded shakes up the draft, shakes up the entire AFC, shakes up quarterback pursuits all over. That's kind of been the one I'm focused on. That's the biggest story that has yet to happen. In terms of stories that and signings that have happened, looking at Spot Track's free agency tracker, I mean, obviously we went over the Derek Carr one. The Jimmy Garoppolo deal for Vegas, I think, is pretty good. I think that essentially took them out of Lamar, but Vegas is that type of team where you never know. But I think the only quarterback the Raiders would really add at this point would be a drafted one, a la a Will Levis, Anthony Richardson type player. I think the biggest move has been the Jalen Ramsey trade, even though it's one of the smallest returns. That shores up that Miami defense to an extent where I am very scared of that roster on paper. I think that the Cowboys trading for Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, two great under-the-radar moves. They didn't give up a lot for them either. We got some big signings as well. Jerron Hargrave to the 49ers. He's going to feast in that defense. McGlinchey, think he got a little overpaid by Denver. Denver needs to shore up that line, though. Jesse Bates, amazing signing by the Falcons. Love that. Orlando Brown to the Bengals. Very surprised the Bengals gave him that deal. Love that they're continuing to protect Burrow. And I think the last one for me, or the last two, is the Eagles retaining both. Well, also, Don brings up the point. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Love that signing for Detroit. Detroit has had an amazing free agency. But the fact that Philly kept both Darius Slay and James Bradbury, of course they did. Of course the Eagles kept both of them. I want to say I'm surprised. I'm really not surprised. With those moves, I think you would have to agree it's probably like Ramsey and the Eagles moves that really stick out, because it's those contenders making those moves to stay at that type of level, even though Philly has lost a good chunk of players.
I know Ramsey had kind of a tough year last year, but I think that's just because the team of what was going on with LA last year. I think he'll bounce right back. I mean, he's been a top quarterback for the past however long it's been since he's been on Jacksonville. So that's a great addition. Just buffers up a Miami team that was already good last year and was already getting, like, the analysts were thinking they had a good chance to win a lot last year, and they did really fall short from what occurred, but they'll be right back in the mix. I'm still just stuck on the Lamar. I'm curious with a team, like, if I'm one of the guys looking at, like, with these top draft picks, if you could give up some more, I'd rather Lamar over Bryce Young. I'd rather Lamar over Will Levis. I'd even say CJ Stroud, just because, I don't know, when I come to it, when I am looking at quarterbacks, I don't like throwing them right into the mix right away. I think they deserve a year to learn more, but obviously some things change that, and some guys are more advanced than others. But I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like a team would love just to have Lamar, just boom, we know you can do what you do, and we're a contender right away with you on this team. If we put pieces behind around you.
All things being equal, I would rather have Lamar over Rodgers.
Oh yeah,
but that's not the reality of the situation for the Jets right now.
No.
Obviously, if it reaches that point, amazing. But you take that. I mean, I feel like it's not a stretch in the slightest. I feel like it's a smart thing. You take the MVP over the rookie, the guy that hasn't proved. You take the guy that's proved almost everything over the guys that haven't proved anything at all. And especially if that contract isn't he doesn't want the fully guaranteed deal, which, like I said before, and I always will say, rumors come out for a reason. You got to remember where that's probably coming from. But if that is true,
yeah,
I don't know why a team like Indy isn't jumping at that,
right.
Especially when they're at 4, where they could have the last quarterback that's even first round potential on the board for them. So very interesting stuff. Also, Don mentions Austin Eckler and Derrick Henry still out there. Look, we weren't on for basically 2 weeks. Lots of NFL news happened. Austin Eckler is looking for a trade, potentially a trade. Derrick Henry's name has been floated. Sticking with running backs, Miles Sanders is in Carolina, David Montgomery is in Detroit. Just a lot of crazy signings going on, a lot of really good moves from teams, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that impacts the draft. But as Toomey said, as I've said, this Lamar news, that's the key. That's the key to a lot of different things in this offseason, because quarterback's the position that influences so many teams. I mean, look at the Jets, look at the Ravens and the Packers, for example. The Jets have really only signed in-house guys, depth options, and Allen Lazard, who is linked to Rodgers. The Packers have barely made any moves. And the Ravens have not signed a single free agent. The only move they've made is cut Parris Campbell. Why is this? Quarterback. When your quarterback situation isn't figured out, or you don't have an idea of what you're doing, you can't make moves. You see that with the varying extents between those 3 teams. It's very interesting, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens, because a Lamar holdout, very possible. A Lamar hold out throughout the season. Don't know how possible that is. Seems very likely, though, to an extent. I'd give it like a 10% chance, which before it was like a 2. It's increasing. And him leaving Baltimore, I think that percentage is increasing a little bit more every single day. So a lot of NFL news. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we bounce to the next sport? Or do you think that's enough for today?
I think we covered good stuff. I
think
we did a good job. Yeah.
So stick with us because guess what? This Aaron Rodgers move, as that someone guy said, yeah, we weren't adding anything to it because it hasn't happened yet. Mind blown. No way. But yeah, stick with us for the upcoming NFL news. We're going to be talking draft. Going to be talking the rest of the Wave 2, Wave 3 free agency pickups. Talk about specifically what that means for the Jets and what that means for the Giants, because we are the city that never sleeps. We talk New York sports. So stick with us here. And now it's time to move on to hockey.
Ooh.
Hockey early in the show, Toom. Mind blown. No way. But yeah, where do you want to start with that? Because I think there's lots of Rangers and Devils and Islanders stuff we can get.
There is. I guess we could just jump right into the Devils. I could touch on some things real fast. I mean, it's been a while. There's a lot happened. But I just guess to start, a couple weeks, not Nashville, before that. So before last week, Devils had the biggest game they've had in 5 years in the franchise. And they came out and they held the Hurricanes to a shutout. Unbelievable. 3-0 game. And then the schedule got tough for them. But with that win, though, it pushed them to like a 40% chance to take that first seed, which is all I've wanted as a fan, and I think everyone else as well. And it came down to it. They had a tough stretch against a good Lightning team and then a good Florida Panther team. Lost all of them, but then came out, beat the Lightning. They're just in a little bit of a trouble right now, just finding where everyone fits together now, especially with that Timo Meier signing. I don't know if the Rangers have been seen as well with the fitting of, but they've been red hot lately, so I'm guessing not. They've been mixing the lines a lot, and to be honest, they have to figure this out before the final 10 games, which is coming up, or else they could really be in an issue going into the playoffs, especially if you want to touch on a red-hot Rangers team right now.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Devils, I mean, look, I get it. Devils are an insane team. We've harped and harped and harped on this. The East is just probably the best hockey conference I've ever seen. I don't care that the Lightning don't have the same quote-unquote amount of points as the Rangers or the Devils. I don't care that they have 7 less points than the Devils. The Lightning are one of the best teams in hockey. When you have to play the Lightning 4 times or 3 times in 4 games, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's very tough. The Lightning, we're not that far removed from them basically winning two chips in a row and making it to the finals like 3-4 years in a row.
Yeah.
We're not that far removed from it. They are a legitimately scary team. And to your point, the Devils and Rangers are very similar because they added so much offensive firepower to the point where they have to make sure it all fits.
Yeah.
The Rangers, if you remember, went through their rut already. At least I feel like they went through a rut.
They went through something, yeah.
Because if you look at it,
it was a while back.
Past the trade deadline, they lost to the Bruins 4-2. They beat the Canadiens in a shootout. Then they were taken to overtime by the Sabres. Then they lost in overtime to the Penguins. Then they beat the Capitals, and that really started the stretch. So they beat the Capitals 5-3. Then they beat the Penguins 4-2. And in these next 2 games, if we look at the scores, and I have a funny story about like my place when I was seeing this happening. They then proceeded to beat Pittsburgh 6-0 and the Predators 7-0 in back-to-back games. They scored 13 goals in 6 periods. Ridiculous.
Unanswered.
2 shutouts. And I'm sitting there. I'm like in my room where I am now. I'm about to put it on my laptop, and I see goal alert, and it's 3-0. I'm like looking. I'm like, all right, I like, what's the point at this point? And it just kept happening, and it's great to see because to Toomey's point, the offense is clicking together now. This was we've discussed this verbatim. It was all about getting ready for the playoffs. Looking at these standings, look, is there obviously a shot? Yeah. But the Rangers are 5 points behind the Devils and 6 points behind the Hurricanes. They are 12 points up on the Islanders. You are essentially locked into a playoff spot. The biggest key is ensuring that the team is ready to roll and not overdoing it to try to reach something that you may not reach. If the Rangers offense performs like it has in these past 2 games, really past 4 games, there is not many, if any, teams in the NHL that will be able to stand up to them. If you have Tarasenko, Trocheck, Kane, Trouba, Panarin, Zibanejad, I could keep going. You have Keandre Miller scoring the highest. He basically tied a Rangers record with the highest amount of points from a defenseman in a single period. It's firepower on firepower on firepower. Get that correct and get set for the playoffs, you can actually go on a run. And that's what I think the Devils are going to look to do now too. But they're in a different spot because they're only a point behind. They're only a point behind the Hurricanes for the 1 spot. So they're in that fight. It's interesting because when you push it too far sometimes, you have potential to hit the skids at the wrong point in time. And we're not near, we're close to the end of the year, but looking games wise, Rangers still have 12 games left?
Devils 12, Hurricanes 14.
So you could hit that skid, but that's the important part. You got to make sure you don't hit the skids at the wrong point in time. It's all about timing. It's all about ensuring that your team is in the best shape and ready to go, especially in the Eastern Conference where every team in the playoffs is going to have a shot to win, no matter what.
Devils have a real test tonight, too. I might be going to the game. They're playing the Wild. Will be a good playoff-esque game with the Wild, who I think have made a claim to be a real shot at the Western Conference finalists for sure.
Rangers have a bit of a test the next 2 games as well. And this may be imperative for how the rest of the standings shape up.
Who we got?
Rangers have the Hurricanes back-to-back.
Oh, that is a real test.
They play the Hurricanes tonight at home, and they play them on the road in Carolina on Thursday. So by next week, we could have a new first-place team in the Metro. And the Rangers, and if the Rangers win both these games, they could be knocking on that door as well.
Oh yeah,
which that would create a very fun.
Which a couple of weeks ago they had I think it was a 1% chance to become the 1 seed. That was when the Devils were playing the Hurricanes. They had a 1% chance to get that 1 seed. Anything can happen.
Well, I'm going to read off the Rangers' remaining schedule here. They have the 2 Hurricanes games. Yep. They then play the Panthers, Blue Jackets, Devils, which that Devils game we'll talk a little bit about before the end of the show. Then they have the Sabres, Capitals, Lightning, Blues, Blue Jackets, Sabres, Maple Leafs. Pretty good stretch, if you ask me.
I heard 4 games right there. That's it. 4. Actually, did you say the Panthers too?
I think so.
All right, so 5. 5 serious games right there, but the rest, they could easily roll through the rest of those teams for sure.
It's going to be an exciting race to the finish. I thought there was like a hockey term I could have used. Rush to the finish. I don't know.
Say whatever you want. Okay. At the end of the day, though, the Bruins are still the Bruins. They got 13 more points than the next team behind them, and they're just running away with the regular season for sure. And we'll see if that carries over the playoffs. I feel bad for that wild card team that's got to step up against them.
Seen crazier things happen, man. Seen crazier things happen.
It's awesome, though. No, it's going to be a great finish, but the Devils really got to figure this out in the next 2 games. And push forward.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Islanders sitting pretty comfortably in a wild card spot, at least in terms of the teams that they're battling. The only 2 teams, or the only really 3 teams in range right now are the Islanders, the Penguins, and the Panthers. Islanders have the most points out of those 3 at 80, followed by the Panthers at 79, and then the Penguins at 78. So as long as the Islanders can keep in that range, we could have all 3 New York metro area teams in the playoffs, which that's exciting for this show. I'll tell you that.
It is for sure. As much as I dislike both the other teams, it's cool to see.
Yeah, exactly. Toomey giving me the pause, just making me feel like he's just dropping off in the middle. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up our hockey talk. Like I said, we got a fun rush to the finish. We're gonna keep you guys updated on everything that's going on down the stretch. And now it's time to jump over to basketball, because I want baseball to be the last topic, because I have we're gonna have to talk about World Baseball Classic to end the show.
Yeah.
We have to. So the Knicks are currently, if we look at the standings, the number 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. Woo! We already have the top 2 seeds that have clinched playoff position in the Bucks and Celtics. No surprise there. The Sixers are a half game behind the Celtics and 3 behind Milwaukee. The Knicks currently are 2 games up on the Nets and 3 games up on the Heat and 6 games up on the Hawks. So I think they also have about 11 or 10 games remaining. Let me double check that as well. Look at the games remaining. Yeah, so the Knicks have... Yeah, with the Knicks having 10 games remaining, I think you can firmly say they're at least a play-in team, which is good to see. But I truly think, and I'm going to stick to my guns where I said this before, I think the Knicks will be a playoff team right off the bat. They are talented enough. They have enough firepower scoring. They have enough defense. I don't think they're going to hit the skids to finish the year. I think they're going to firmly be a playoff team and going to give whoever they meet in the first round a very tough time. So where do you fall with them? What have you seen out of them? And what do you think of their upcoming schedule, which with me looking at it, they got some pretty interesting games.
I think before the playoffs, you like to see some tests. You don't want to just waltz. I think that's a word. Right into the playoffs for sure. You want to go against those teams that you're going to possibly see in the playoffs. And I think the best thing for the Knicks right now is that they've shown that they can beat the best teams in the East. And they've done it. They've beaten the Celtics a bunch of times. I remember a couple of weeks ago, they definitely did that. I think that's the most test. You don't want a team that just creeps their way in, didn't really prove much throughout the year, but kept consistently just staying at a certain position in the playoffs. The Knicks did a great job all year. Kudos to them. And it wasn't really the route that you expected. I think a couple guys may have fell off a little bit, but really came back up. You've seen a full team effort, which is awesome to see. Any given night, someone else can do something big. I think that's also very imperative for a successful playoff run. And there's a ton of guys. There's a lot of, you could say in a Knicks sense, that they have a lot of star power of different guys that can do things, and fully healthy, they can give any team in the East a run for their money. And I don't think you It's been a while since you can say that. A long time. Maybe back to that 2012-13 year or whatever, 13-14. I know I got the 13 right. Just don't know which season was, but no, they can really make a run.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And like even looking at last night, obviously, personally felt like it was a bit of a trap game, playing the Timberwolves. Had to deal with Rudy Gobert, no Anthony Edwards, but Julius Randle still able to drop 57 points. RJ Barrett, the ever frustrating player that he is, only with 13. Jalen Brunson had double-double, 23 points, 10 assists. Quickly, of course, 19. Josh Hart doing his thing. But it's like they're the type of team that's going to compete night in, night out. I don't think they've been blown out in a game for like the past month and a half. They're always competing. They're always in the game, and they're never going to give in. It's that identity. They have that identity back. It's that identity that they had with that improbable playoff run where they eventually lost to the Hawks. They lost that identity last year. They didn't have it beginning of the year, and now they have it back again. And like looking at the schedule too, right? You have the Miami Heat coming up on tomorrow night. You then have the Magic and the Rockets. You then have another stretch where you play the Heat and the Cavs. And you finish the year with the Wizards, Pacers, Pelicans, and Pacers again. That's a very good and easy stretch outside of the Eastern teams.
Yeah.
And when I say Eastern teams, I mean Miami and the Cavs. Those games should be a nice tune-up for whether you are in the play-in or playoffs. That will be a nice barometer to see where you are at with the team you're probably playing in that first round. I'm very excited to see how the Knicks finish out this year. I think, like I have said, they're going to compete. I think they win one playoff series. I'm going to stick to my guns. We will see if I'm correct in that regard. But I'm excited about this team because I think this year, more so than the last time they were in the playoffs, will truly be a foundational year because you are truly getting production out of Quickly. You are truly getting production out of Grimes, out of Barrett, no matter how much I get annoyed by his performance. You're seeing that Randle truly can be that consistent type of player. You have Brunson there. And you have younger guys like an Obi, a McBride, slowly starting to show flashes more and more of what they can do. I'm very excited for not just the Knicks, but also seeing what this other New York team can do. More of an interest. The Nets. Nets are firmly entrenched in a spot as well. They're 3 up on the Hawks, or 4 up on the Hawks, and 1 up on the Heat. So you could argue they're probably firmly entrenched in a play-in spot at minimum as well. They're very similar to the Knicks. They score, they play defense, but they don't have that quote-unquote star power that you could argue the Knicks may be starting to develop. They're that Brooklyn, gritty, tough team that personally was one of my favorite underrated teams to root for in the past. And they're back to that level again. We have Rob in the chat saying, rest in peace, Willis Reed. We touched on that on the top of the show. Amazing person, amazing player. Rest in peace to him. Well, he's going to be very, very, very sorely missed. And I just, want to see the Knicks carry on that legacy. Want to see the Nets continue to compete. And I think we're going to have a fun stretch down the rest of these games for the Knicks and Nets. And now I want to ask you to take the floor about your Lakers, because what's going on?
It's been an interesting time for them. Again, we say it once a week, it's the Wild Wild West in that Western Conference. They've had some big wins. They've had some big losses. I know the other night they lost to the Magic 111-110 in a nail-biter. But then they come out at a different time, and the big talk of the town right now has been Austin Reeves. If no one out there knows who Austin Reeves is, he's really a role player for the Lakers. He fit into that Alex Caruso role when he was there. And he's brought a lot of life and a lot of energy to his team. The other night, he dropped 35, 6, and 6 from a guy you wouldn't expect that from. Did a great job, pretty much carried them to a win. The whole talk's been him getting contracts, but we'll just go to the rest of it. They're sitting in the 11th seed right now. And all Lakers fans are really looking at is the Lakers got to win, and then we're looking at every other Western team to see what happens. My whole feed on Twitter is just like it starts the day with like matchups to look at, and then we'll see what happens from there. But from that 11th seed, they're a game and a half out of the 6. So again, still very tight. They're probably just as close to this 5-4 seed as well. But they've shown that they can compete with a lot of teams. And this is without LeBron too. So they've been hot. A lot of tough losses, but once you get LeBron back, the timetable on LeBron still is a little hazy. It started off as 3 weeks. Now talks have come out. He still has to get reevaluated again. So don't know when he's going to come back, but I think they're going to cement themselves in a play-in for sure when it comes down to it. Some teams are going to fall out of that and hit realization fast in the final 12, 10 games, however many it is. But Lakers got a chance to do some damage. When it really comes down to it, if they have the 10th or the 8 come to playoff time, they're not going to touch the Nuggets. The Nuggets, I think, are too dominant, have such a life to them and really know what they're doing. Too much team chemistry there for a team like the Lakers just to swoop in and take that from them. But it was a good run. Hopefully they can swoop in somewhere else. But it's exciting to see that the Lakers have some life, especially with the new additions they've made. It really worked out. But I don't know. I'm curious to see where they fall. The offseason, I think, is going to be way more exciting for them than currently.
All right. So I gave my hot take with the Knicks. I think they win a playoff series. It's time for you to stand 10 toes down, give a take, ride out the rest of the year. Where do the Lakers end up? Are they a play-in team? Do they make the playoffs? Do they win a series? What do we got?
They're a play-in team that makes the playoffs.
There you have it, folks. The Lakers are a play-in team that will make the NBA playoffs. Stay tuned for more NBA talk. Like I said with the NHL, coming down the stretch. Going to be very, very, you might see it on my face in the next few weeks, but with the Knicks and Rangers approaching playoff time, you're going to see this very calm look, just be like very not stressed, but very intent on hoping that my teams win. So stay tuned for that. And now it's time to talk about the baseball. Not necessarily just one side of baseball, but multiple sides of baseball. So here's what we're going to do, Tim.
Let's hear it.
I'm going to give my futures for the AL East and NL East because we took a week off. We went to Nashville.
Yep.
And then we're going to talk about the World Baseball Classic.
Nice.
Because I got to get some things off my chest.
Let's hear it.
But first, 1 second. Creative Loan Design Center, serving New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Florida. They are fully authorized Hunter and Douglas dealer. Contact Jeff at 609-226-0391 for a free consultation. Also, 1 second here. All Campus is giving 20% off everything in our store, including hats and shirts to our subscribers. Make sure to get in on that. All right, buddy. Baseball season's right around the corner, and ever since I have ceremoniously, with a wink, retired from the sport, I don't think I've ever been this excited about a season. I don't know. Maybe it's the
maybe not anymore, but
no, I'm excited. I'm excited for this year.
No, it's gonna be a good one.
And if you remember on the show in the past, we've covered the Central divisions, we covered the West divisions. Now it's time to cover the East. And the East is where both New York teams play. Wouldn't you know that? So we're going to start with the AL East here. Odds right now to win the division. There is no favorite in terms of minus odds. The Yankees are at plus 120. The Blue Jays are at plus 220. The Rays are at plus 270. And then you have the Red Sox at plus 1,800 and the Orioles at plus 2,500. Excuse me. Yankees are my favorite here. I am very, very, very intrigued and excited for Anthony Volpe because he should be on the Major League roster. I think Oswald Peraza is the underrated, just not talked about guy enough, but he's going to be a stud too. Selfishly, I want Jason Dominguez on the MLB roster. I don't know if that happens yet. I think it's going to hopefully take. I hope to see him at some point this year, because with the way he's been hitting in spring training, if he can show that throughout the minor league season, look, the Yankees need another outfielder badly. If you can have him in that lineup, having the protection from Judge, from Stanton, maybe Volpe if he's hitting and producing. Why throw out guys like Aaron Hicks and IKF? It makes no sense. This is coming from a Mets fan, guys. It's evident. It's clear. Come on. But the Yankees are the favorite. I would put money on them. And then my long shot, I love Toronto. But if you really want bang for your buck, put some money on Baltimore. They're a young team. Crazier things have happened. Get in on Baltimore while you can, because they are going to be the team that's competing with Toronto and New York for this division for years to come. They are that rising star team, and their minor league system is legitimately ridiculous. Gunnar Henderson, Heston Kjerstad, which he's been raking in spring training. They have, outside of Gunnar too, like Ryan Mountcastle. They have Jackson Holiday in a few years. Like, there's a lot of guys that are going to be coming up through that system that are going to be legitimately insane for this team. Adley Rutschman too. Yeah. How could you forget about Adley? Incredible. I'm very excited. Where do you stand with that?
No, I've always been a big fan of Baltimore when it comes down to that, but very exciting team. Love the stadium too. A lot of history down there. Awesome area if you get the chance to go. But besides that, the Yankees should be you can't say a lock before the season ever starts, but they have the best chances and they have the best team surrounded to win that AL East. They did last year, and there's no reason why they shouldn't do that again.
And then the NL East, this will be a fun conversation. The Atlanta Braves it's very similar to the NL, or the AL, by the way. There's not a minus favorite. The Braves are plus 100. The Mets are plus 170. The Phillies are plus 340, which I'm very surprised by.
That's a shock.
The Marlins are plus 4,500. And I'm laughing for this last one because it makes sense. But when you see odds like this, it always makes you crack up. The Nationals are plus 25,000 to win the division.
Yeah.
So what would $1 win in that case? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to win.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, the two teams I'm betting on to win that division, or I'm putting money on, are the Mets and Phillies. And the reason that is, I feel like those two teams are the ones that have the most firepower and have the most depth. They have the upper echelon talent, and finally, both these teams have the depth to back up that firepower. The Mets are going to have young guys coming up, whether that's Beatty right away, Alvarez, Mauricio potentially later in the year. Vientos has been raking. All these guys they've signed, like Tim Locastro, who I didn't know could hit that well, but he's been killing the ball. Abraham Almonte. Like, the Mets have just a lot of just depth, and that's important. Philly does as well. They also seemingly added, like, currently the best hitter on the planet in Trey Turner, or at least that's the case. You've been watching the World Baseball Classic. It's just those two teams I feel are going to be duking it out. And here's the reason I'm not as high on Atlanta. They lost Freddie Freeman and Dansby Swanson in back-to-back off seasons, and I get it. the Braves are the type of organization where they can just throw a guy in there and produce. But at the end of the day, you're going to feel the effects of not having the star power. Yes, they added Sean Murphy. Yes, they added and re-signed like half their organization. Ronald Acuna is going to be a stud this year again. I'm fully convinced of that. Looks like in the World Baseball Classic, that knee is fully healed. I just feel like they don't have the pitching depth, and I feel like they don't have the lineup depth. Because now when you have to rely on Vaughn Grissom as that main starter at shortstop instead of a complementary piece, can he fully produce? Can Michael Harris fully replicate that rookie season? Can these young guys like Spencer Strider replicate what they did last year? And here's the caveat. If they do, the Braves are right up there with the Phillies and Mets for me. 1,000%. But you are banking, and this is so hard to do with baseball, especially. You are banking on all these guys replicating those performances. You're banking on Olsen, d'Arnaud, Grissom, Harris. There's Strider. There's probably more than I'm forgetting. The perfect example of this I have is Ian Anderson. Ian Anderson was one of my favorite young pitchers in baseball. He completely fell off after he started his career hot. And I hope he finds it again. But that goes to show you where my head is at with Atlanta, because you're banking on all these guys continuing to produce like superstars. And if you have an entire team that's producing like stars, of course you're going to win the division. It's simple as that. But how likely is that to happen? How likely are you to not have all these guys be injured, or not have some of the guys that weren't injured still not be injured? It's a very interesting, and because I'm not as sold on Atlanta's depth, I don't really feel like they are competing for that division, but I still feel like they're a wild card team at worst.
I would say just on that, just one, talk about big threes in the division. That's the toughest division in baseball by far. I don't think it comes close. Especially even if you add the Marlins into that, who have a lot of talent. I don't think they're going to do anything. But that division, I mean, just because the Nationals are there too, I think they're still the toughest division in baseball. And I think the Braves are actually I don't know if you want to go into like World Series predictions, but I'm just going to throw out Braves are my team I think is going to win.
Well, I mean, I think World Series prediction next week. Baseball season starts next week.
That's true. Yeah. I do think they have that talent. And
you're pushing too far ahead, man.
I just had to say it because you left them out to die.
And it's not even a bias thing, because I said Philly. I feel like it's one of the best teams in the division. Yeah. I'm not. Look, I can't be wrong. I'm just not sold on their depth. I'm not sold. I'm not sold on the guys behind the superstars, because their superstars are incredible. Oof. They have one of the best lineups in baseball. But what happens if someone doesn't produce? Who's filling in? And you could say that for the Mets and Phillies too, if guys don't produce. But I just like their depth better than Atlanta's. Is that probably a sellout? Probably, but that's just where I fall with it.
No, I understand. I follow you.
All right.
And now
we have 20 minutes left. It's time.
Yeah, we're actually going to start with the bad news, so you can go first. I'll talk about the Yankees after.
Oh, I was avoiding that. I didn't want to.
You were.
You put that back in my mind. But no, it's that. But here's the thing. It actually ties, all jokes aside, it actually ties into it. Because I want to ask you a question, Toomey. Do you think the World Baseball Classic is meaningless?
No.
No?
Nope.
Do you think it's pointless?
Oof. When it comes down to it, yeah.
You see, I feel like I used to think like that as well. I think I used to think, oh, it's just a pointless tournament. I don't think that's the case in the slightest. I think it's actually, and look, and this is coming, full caveat here, from a Mets fan who probably lost their main closer for the entire year because of this tournament.
Before you start, I want to retract my statement when you're done.
Okay. you can retract it now. I'm giving you that opportunity. Yeah.
Once you really think about it in the sense of bigger things happening, when you see a player who's at the top of his craft go down like with an injury like that, and then it affects the rest of his team's organization or season they'll be, that's when it comes to a point where, yeah, it was a bit pointless to do that. But when it comes down to the everlasting growth of baseball, it does such wonders and such great things, especially in countries that, when you see a team like Great Britain or Nicaragua, who we saw in the tournament, not really big baseball places, but tournaments like this give them a chance to shine a light on a team that isn't really that popular and really grows the sport of baseball, which I think that's the main reason and the best part of it. For years to come, hey, we got a big game tonight, United States versus Japan. If you think Japan's like that big at baseball, you would never know besides seeing this, because a lot of guys aren't really in the league. They have different rules out there for when they come, but the talent out there is insane. There's a lot of great talent in Japan. I think the World Baseball Classic does great things for the sport in general, and really kids out in countries somewhere that would never want to pick up a baseball will be like, I want to do that, and it could be the next star of the league. So I think it's a real cool opportunity when it comes with that. But when it comes and affects an MLB season, that's where I see it can become pointless.
So, like, getting back on my soapbox here. So, like, here's where I fall with it, right? At the end of the day, and looking at Diaz and even Altuve now, do those injuries suck? Absolutely. Yeah. But if you really think about it, it was as likely that to happen there as it would be to happen in spring training. Look at Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo hurt his knee sliding into second base in the spring training game. Is that still pointless? No. You're preparing for a season. You're preparing to play. And looking at the World Baseball Classic, especially this year, this is basically the World Cup of baseball. Yeah. And not basically, it really is. You look at the environments that these games have been played in. Look at the reactions. Mike Trout is showing emotion. Mike Trout is thriving off the energy. Mike Trout hasn't played in a meaningful baseball game since I was 12. Shohei Ohtani hits a double last night and is screaming at the top of his lungs. When have you seen Ohtani do that? You haven't. That's the thing. This tournament allows players to have pride in their own countries, to represent their own countries, when, let's face it, most of them never have an opportunity to do so outside of this. And people in these different countries that don't have Major League Baseball teams, that maybe don't even have big leagues, instead of cheering for Shohei Ohtani, who's on the Angels, you're cheering for Shohei Ohtani, who's playing for Japan. You're cheering for Mike Trout, who's playing for the United States. You're cheering for Ronald Acuna, who's playing for Venezuela. It means something because it's growing the game. It's allowing people to see themselves in their favorite players, because it's not taking place in games where they're just playing for a major league organization like the Red Sox, the Mets, the Yankees, the Braves, the Brewers, the Blue Jays. No, they're playing for Venezuela, for Puerto Rico, for the Dominican Republic, for Israel, Nicaragua, Venezuela. It means something. And look at the numbers. These highlights are getting more views than any World Series highlight. These games, the viewerships are through the roof. You have guys coming out after games and saying, these are the best environments I've ever played in. Randy Arozarena, who has played in World Series. Trey Turner, who has played in World Series. Won World Series. This tournament is insanely important. And there's a lot of people out there that are saying, oh, just cancel it. I hope this happens to this because this tournament's point. Like, it's not all about the major league side. And it's very hard, I think, for especially people in the United States to realize that. Because we're all here. The Major League Baseball is like our league. All the teams are basically here. So when something affects an organization that you cheer for here, you're going to feel a certain type of way about it. You know, I felt a certain type of way when Edwin Diaz got hurt. Of course, it affects the Mets' entire season. There's no discounting that. But it's wrong to go out after that and say, screw this tournament. This tournament's pointless. You gotta put yourself in other people's shoes, man. You gotta put yourself in these situations of these players, these guys, and be like, how would I feel if I was playing in this tournament? Because I know how I would feel. I would take pride in it. I would love it. It'd be very important. And it's not just important for these guys. As Toomey said, it's important for the fans. It's important to grow the game of baseball. And guess what? Newsflash, like I said, this tournament's doing more to grow the game of baseball than anything the major leagues has done, I think, in the past decade. Anything Major League Baseball has done in the past decade. These environments have been so absurd. There's not many times you can tell on TV when an environment is amazing. I can tell every single one of these games that the environment is just through the roof, incredible, and just somewhere where you want to be, you know?
It's a Game 7 World Series at all times. It truly is. And it does so much for the sport of baseball, which I think is the most important thing. And I'm curious, Edwin Diaz, he'd play it again. I know he would. I know he'd go back and play next year or the next 2 years, whenever it is again, 4 years.
Yeah.
However long. He'll go back and play.
100%. And it's crazy because looking at this and like following it on social media, there's such a disconnect between how the United States views it and how the rest of the world views it. The United States, first, it's very interesting because you want to know what I think it boils down to? And this might sound weird at first when I say it, but I think it boils down to that soccer isn't big here. And that soccer isn't like this very like big sport here. Because the World Cup's amazing. But look at how the U.S. handles the World Cup versus how every other country handles the World Cup. Right? Now look at the World Baseball Classic. Look at how the U.S. fans handle it as opposed to the rest of the world fans handle it. It's very different.
Yeah.
And it also boils down to how baseball itself is treated in the United States versus the rest of the world. You've seen that go with the players. The players, it's not even at that point because you see it. The players have the passion. The players are celebrating. They're loving it. You see it with Trey Turner doing the bat flips and all that stuff. But baseball here, and me and you can relate to this because we came up through it, very buttoned up. Very respect the game, very buttoned up, very don't do this, don't do that, don't show emotion. keep your head down and just play hard. You go to any other country and play baseball, it is a party. It's literally a party. I luckily had the opportunity when I was 13 to go play a tournament in Puerto Rico. One of the best baseball environments I've been to. You play, there's cowbells, there's whistling, it's a celebration. The game is treated as truly fun. And for some reason here we lose sight of that. And I think that all ties back into how it's viewed. You're not viewing it as you're viewing it as a job. You're not viewing it as a fun game, a game that you're representing your country for. No, you're viewing it as, oh, it's just some other spring training-ish game. And that's just not the case. And I feel like that viewpoint needs to be changed in order for the majority of baseball fans here, as in the United States, to embrace it. Because I think that's what the problem is. You don't see fans of other countries ripping on the World Baseball Classic. No, it's the people here. And I feel like that needs to change.
No, it's a very good take. Can definitely talk about it for a long time. But, we definitely said a lot of good points. And at the end of the day, I'm a fan of it. And I think everything that comes down or everything that comes out of it is good at the end of the day, besides like players getting injured. But like I said, there's probably a bunch of people on shows right now ripping it and saying that's silly that a guy like this of that caliber is playing it. But that means it's more important than you think. He's not getting paid by them to go do this. It probably makes these guys feel like they're kids again playing. And at the end of the day, how can you take that away from them?
And also, right, what's the difference if someone gets hurt in the regular season?
Yeah.
Oh, what? If someone gets hurt in games 35 of the Major League season. What, are you going to call that meaningless too? Right? Yeah. Like here's the thing. What's the difference between getting hurt in World Baseball Classic, spring training, and the regular season? In my opinion, not really much. Because if we're talking postseason, sure, then that's a bit different. But there's over 180 regular season games. You want to bring up the meaningless argument? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Oh, the MLB keeps expanding the postseason. Oh, so are we ready to call the regular season meaningless now? This is the type of conversation that can be had if you go down that path, because it's not so cut and dry. It's not.
No, yeah. Very good points. But I love to see it. Can't wait for the next one. And can't wait for this game tonight for sure.
This game, Trout versus Ohtani. We need that matchup. We need that matchup.
It will be a very good one. I can't wait.
Who do you think wins? Score prediction and winner.
Upsettingly enough, I got to see the starters. I'm pretty sure Darvish is starting for Japan.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. Who's starting for the United States?
I didn't see.
That's the question, right? That's all I've been seeing.
I know.
But the pitch counts go up. Maybe Darvish hits like 60-some pitches. As of right now, I think Japan's got the upper hand because of the starting situation, because the United States has no starters, and we've seen that. I think they have the upper hand on that. So if I gotta still put United States though, I'll say 7-5 United States win.
I'm gonna go with a. I'm running through score predictions in my head. I'm gonna go with 7. Who's the home team? Do we know?
No.
Scratch that. I'm going to go with 6-5 United States. Because I think these teams are going to hit. Not like 10 runs apiece, but I think these teams are going to hit.
I'm curious how the crowd looks without all these South American or
Latin American
crowds.
I think it's still going to be packed.
So it'll be good.
I saw a video on Twitter. The line's already like down the block, and it's like
That's what we love to see. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's gonna be great. I'm very excited for it, and we got 5 minutes left in the show, so it's time to just quickly discuss what are we looking for this week.
I want official news. I don't know what I saw the other day, but official news on Anthony Volpe. That's what I want to see. I saw some news that said he's got it, and I've seen other things, so I don't know how official it was. Want to see the Devils win. Devils got some games the rest of the way. That's going to be some town stuff. Hopefully they can blow it off. I'm looking at the Lakers as well, going down that rabbit hole of trying to get that playoff spot. And lastly, I want to see Aaron Rodgers wearing a number 12 Jets uniform.
Love that list. For me, that's where I'm starting. I am looking to see official confirmation for the Rodgers news, hopefully by this weekend, if at the latest by the start of our show next week. Got to see that occur. I want to see Brett Beatty officially get the third base job. I think that if not that, he needs to be on the major league roster at the very minimum. Dude has been one of the best hitters in all of spring training, and I frankly feel like he adds a different dimension to that Mets lineup that they don't have right now. In terms of the Knicks, I want to see them at least take one of two from the Heat, keep that distance. Definitely want to see them beat the Cavs, show that they're ready to roll against whoever they're facing in that first round / playoff play-in matchup. And the Rangers, I mean, they're not going to score 7 goals a game. If they do, then we're we're winning the damn cup. I'll say that here and now. But I want to see them take at least one from the Canes. And maybe it's pushing it to say both, but if they're able to take one, I'm going to feel a lot more confident in whoever they're playing in that series, because if they lose both of the Canes, that starts to put the thought in your head like, all right, do I maybe have something I need to worry about with this team? But I think they at least win one. They're going to be tough games, but I'm very excited. And the last thing I'm looking to, what happens with Lamar Jackson? Does this news and situation continue to deteriorate? Was it smoke? Is it fire? That is going to be vital for me in the coming week. So, on that note, thank you guys for joining us on another great episode of the show. Wanted to announce before we headed out, myself and Toomey will be at the Devils-Rangers game on the 30th. Very excited for that. We'll be covering the game not live on social media, but we'll be tweeting about it, posting about it. It's going to be fun. Very excited to see the Rangers win at the Prudential Center like they usually do.
We might have to sit on opposite sides of the stadium for sure.
It's okay. We'll be right next to each other. It's fine. But no, that's going to be fun. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to really all the shows coming up, because there's going to be a ton of news every single sport. Baseball opening day next week. MLB The Show comes out very soon. I'm excited for that. Toomey's not getting it because he's lame, but that's okay. Toomey, you got anything else you want to add before we head out of here?
Spring's coming. Spring is upon us, and I can't wait for it.
Yes, warm weather indeed.
Warm weather and baseball, baby.
For myself and Toomey, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. We'll catch you guys next time.